Warning. What you are about to watch is a true story. The following program contains content that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
What makes something true? Is it evidence or is it repetition? Think about that for a moment. How many people have to repeat a claim before it stops sounding like a claim at all? Because right now, in this case, there is one sentence traveling across the internet at incredible speed. A fight. On the island. Around 5 in the afternoon. Millions of people have heard some version of it. Almost none of them know where it came from. And that is the part nobody is telling you. Okay, stay with me here. I have the released recording from that afternoon, in full. I have the disputed voice note that 2 separate experts cannot agree on. I have the on-camera interview from the young man who corrected the record about that viral video, in his own words. And I have the autopsy language that cuts in 2 directions at once. If you want this case built on documents instead of comment sections, hit that like button and subscribe to Crime Watch Hub right now. Every timestamp, every recording, every page. You get it here, and you get it accurate.
Bombshell tonight in the Nolan Wells investigation. A mystery altercation emerges. And not with the guys that took him to the island on the boat. Does this change things? We cannot ignore it. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Sending in videos, they should be using those videos to conduct further investigation.
There is a group of people fighting at 5 p.m. Who are they? Where was he? He wasn't floating in the water. He wasn't on the shore. Tonight, evidence of a so-called mystery altercation is emerging. Straight out to Crime Stories investigative reporter Dave Mack. Dave, what can you tell me first about this so-called mystery altercation? And this is not with the men that went to Horn Island on the boat. You know what? Let me just be clear. Crime Stories is not a symposium, a gathering place for a witch hunt. We want the truth about what happened to Nolan Wells. We are here to convict no one yet. And if evidence of a mystery altercation with other young men arises, we are pursuing it. Dave Mack, what do we know about some mystery altercation? We think after the Triton left Horn Island.
Nancy, this is a mystery altercation that is being described through social media as something that took place around 5 p.m. that day. This is 30 minutes after the Triton already left. And in this particular account, a Bertram boat was seen leaving shortly afterward at a high rate of speed. Now, this social media conversation claims that a person, one of the passengers, pretty certain Nolan Wells, was part of a group that was, quote, almost fighting around 5 p.m.
Bip, 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 bip. Whoa, wait. Hold on, Nellie. Did you say 5 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I jumped in, Dave Mack, is because 5 p.m., if Nolan was seen in an altercation at 5 p.m. on Horn Island, that's after the Triton, had already left. Let's see the boat, control room. We're talking about the boat leaving Horn Island. That boat. Had that boat already left when this altercation occurred? Dave Mack, that's a yes, no.
Yes.
Listen.
But the person said in the DM to another kid that is associated, not any of the kids that I interviewed to talk to, but that could be associated to some degree, that knew Nolan, that this person wrote a message saying me and my husband saw you arguing with Nolan, and to the effect of you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Nolan and another person that he may have been in an argument with, to me, are people that need to be investigated.
Guys, let me first introduce Cheryl McCollum, Cold Case Investigative Research Institute founder. Let that sink in at coldcasecrimes.org. She's a star of a hit podcast that I have listened to on loop, by the way, Cheryl McCollum. And I don't like much of what you're saying, yet I keep listening. Zone 7, she's author of a brand new book, Swans Don't Swim in a Sewer, solving the cold case of the Flint River Killer's daughter, and more. But for my purposes tonight, she's a forensics expert. Greg Morse, before I even get to the merits of this, where I meant to go with this is everyone has been focusing on the young men that were on the boat that took him to Horn Island. Then we get this audio that we're trying to corroborate, where seemingly in the background you hear them talking about trying to revive Nolan Wells on the boat. Is that even real? We don't know yet. Or has it been doctored? Trying to find out. I've got experts telling me, renowned experts, by the way, it's real, and renowned experts saying it's not real. It's just like a trial, right? Where it's expert v. expert, who's telling the truth.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about this mystery altercation. If it happened at 5 p.m., that boat was already gone. Now,
Well,
as
you're
much
right.
as some people want to hang the young guys on the boat, I want to make sure we hang the right person. If there is a mystery altercation after that boat lift, we need to be investigating that altercation.
Well, you're 100% right, because the three young men that are, at least the people are saying are involved in this, that went there with Nolan Wells, there's a specific timeline
Put
from
him
what
up.
I read.
Put him
They
up.
needed assistance on their boat. They left at 4:30.
You
They had
just
called
gave me
CTO.
a chill
So
down my spine.
if
You
so,
can't
if there
introduce
is-
something because people say, I don't care what people say on either side.
No.
They mean nothing to me. What?
Nancy, that's the problem when we have things like podcasts today and people who are not qualified to talk about serious things like this. They're not experts. They want to get likes. Law enforcement is going to keep information
He
close to the
said
best.
he saw the DMs. I don't have
Okay,
a
so what does that
reason
mean?
to think
that's
he
not
didn't
legitimate.
see the DMs. Now, many people are arguing that he has taken a side. We have not taken a side. I'm on the side of finding out why everybody got back to the mainland except Nolan Wells.
Well,
And
listen,
nobody
these
saw
are
anything.
teenagers.
Nobody knows anything. It's just like Tupac Shakur got shot on the Strip
Nancy,
at Vegas, and we still don't know what happened. Nobody saw a thing. That's BS.
These are
What?
young men hanging out. It's not unusual one may stay behind to hang out with other people. None of that is unusual for teenagers partying and having a good time. So that fact alone doesn't
Morse.
mean anything. What?
Where's your cell phone? Where is your cell phone? And try not to lie. Where's your cell phone?
Okay, right here.
Oh, really? Because here's mine. So you want to tell me Nolan Wells stayed behind and his cell phone went without him? I understand. Don't everybody start screaming that he didn't want to get it wet. Of course he didn't want to get it wet. But there's ways around that. You can go put it on shore in your shoe, like everybody else does, to hide it from people, and then retrieve it when you go. But no, he let the boat leave with his phone. I agree with his mother on that. That is not Nolan Wells. He was never away from his phone.
So that doesn't mean anything in and of itself with what's coming out about this. You know, you're talking about him staying behind. You're talking about there's evidence that he was there after 4:30 p.m. If he's there after 4:30 p.m., Nolan Wells on that island hanging out with other people, that's it. The fact that a cell phone is on a boat and he's not as a teenager doesn't really mean anything at all.
Okay, you know what? I asked you about a mystery altercation, and should we be looking in that direction right now? And you're like going on and on about the cell phone.
No, but
everybody
that's
that
my
owns
point.
a cell phone, which is everyone,
but
knows you never
Nancy,
leave
that's
without
my
your cell
point.
phone.
You have to look at what really happened. If there was this mystery altercation, then yes, the police need to be investigating that. They need to be looking.
Take it for what it's worth. try to get the truth out of what we're hearing. Okay? Listen.
Nolan and another person that he may have been in an argument with, to me, are people that need to be investigated.
With that, I agree with Tatum. As much as we disagree on practically everything else, if this happened, and forget about the girl, I'm talking about the altercation. Cheryl McCollum, come on. He dies. Nobody sees him. The others get back safely. Now we're hearing about an altercation afterwards. And I'm not ruling out that he was on that boat when they left. But now I'm hearing about an altercation. When you can't tell the truth of what's happening, look at who was angry. Look if there was an altercation. I don't know what happened, but when I hear altercation after the Triton left, I've got to go there.
You got to look at it. You absolutely cannot ignore it. But one thing we already know from the second autopsy, they would have mentioned if he had any type of injury to his knuckles, if he had been in a fight. We didn't hear anything about abrasions or bruising or any type of injury that would be indicative of somebody that is a college football player fighting somebody.
Okay, now I have just told everybody that you're a forensic expert. It's starting to taste like a dirt sandwich. Because, okay, I'm going to let you sit in the corner and think about what you just said. Joe Scott Morgan is joining me, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, star of a hit series, Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. He is a death investigator with over 10,000 death scenes under his belt, deaths of all genre. Joe Scott Morgan, let's refresh Cheryl McCollum's recollection. That's what you say in court when obviously the witness is gone off the rails. Your Honor, pause, Your Honor, objection. May I refresh the witness's recollection? In other words, get it together. Don't you remember what we just talked about before you got on the stand, and you give them a piece of paper and go, can we see that the drawings on the autopsy control room? Joe Scott, there's a big, thank you. There's a big honking mark, subcutaneous, deep reddening tissue on his occipital. If I hit somebody in the back of the head, it'd be right there. We don't know what that is.
No, we don't. But to Cheryl's point, she's accurate. And here's why. Because in forensics, it's not just about positive findings. It's also about negative findings, those things that we are absent. So in that report, as she had mentioned, there was no indication that there was any kind of contusions on the hand, the arm, no kind of defensive event like a parry with a forearm, scuffing of the knuckles, that sort of thing. This forensic pathologist that did the second assessment didn't see any evidence of that. And so that's the first place I'm going to go to, aside from not having the actual primary autopsy report that has not been released yet. But you've got an individual that has, in fact, been retained by the family that's making this assessment. And it's a pretty damn thorough assessment, as a matter of fact, based upon many of them that I've read over the years. You don't see any kind of insults to the arms, the hands, anything like this. The one thing about that thing in the back, this focal area that they're talking about is, and I come back to this all the time, Nancy, is that his body, Nolan's body, is in such a state of decomposition to this point that he cannot make a definitive assessment on that area. And he did a multi-layered dissection, which, by the way, according to him, had not been done by the state medical examiner's office in Mississippi. He just went about it a different way. And as a matter of fact, if you like that one, I got another one. The examination that this physician in DC did on Nolan's remains ranks right up there with the most thorough, hear me talking, the most thorough dissection that you can possibly do on human remains. It's the same one that we do on bodies that have died, individuals that have died that have been incarcerated, in custody deaths. You know what all that means: in the back of a cruiser, in a holding cell, in a prison. Those autopsies rank right up there with the most thorough that we can go. It's a very deep dive that they did on his body.
Joe Scott, you are stating that due to the level of decomposition in Nolan Wells' body, that you can't really figure out why his occipital bone area had deep reddening, and that was seen nowhere else in the body. That's because of decomposition. Isn't that true?
Well, it's true in the sense that that's what
Didn't
the
you just
physician
say that?
said. I'm repeating what the physician said in his autopsy report. I didn't do the examination.
So then that would be a yes. So at that level of decomp that you're claiming could obscure the nature of the deep reddening on his occipital area, but yet on the other side of your mouth, you're claiming that even with this intense decomposition, you didn't see evidence of any reddening on his knuckles or any indication of a fight. So you want it two ways. You want to say, decomp, can't tell what that was on the back of his head, but even though he's highly decomposed, I can tell you, he didn't have any reddening on his knuckles. Really?
No.
Because I see a problem with that.
Okay, you've skinned your knee before, right? Okay. If you have an abrasion, that's completely different than a contusion. That means you have scraping and the tearing away of the skin. That's something that's very obvious. And guess what? I've been in enough fist fights in my life that I know what's scraping. Right, I know, and you're misstating that because it's not a matter of reddening. When we look at hands, we also look at contact points where people are being abraded as a result of scuffing their hands. That's different than a color discoloration. We're talking about the top layer, the epidermis down to the dermis is being scraped away. He doesn't see any evidence of that in his autopsy.
I'm not talking about a scrape. I'm talking about if he had, for instance, reddening from a welt, the beginnings of a bruise. With that level of decomp, you're telling me you could still make that out?
No, those two things cannot exist in the same universe. You have to have an abraded area, and there would be multiple of them on his hands if he is punching or trying to defend himself. And yes, we can make out bruises. Yeah, we can make out bruises.
You don't always have to have scrapes on your hand when you throw a punch. You don't always have to have cuts on your hand when you throw a punch. That's not true.
Well, that sounds mighty convenient if that's the road you want to go down, because I've seen them many times.
That's what I'm telling you. What you're saying is mighty darn convenient. That the reddening on the back of his head, can't really tell anything because he's so decomposed, but you can see his hands well enough to know he was not in a fist fight. Yeah,
right.
That's convenient, Joe Scott. Look, I'm not trying to convict anybody. I'm trying to find the truth. I'm trying to find out if this evidence of an altercation really happened. And to further muddy the waters, now we have more witnesses stating what they saw.
Another report came to me of someone saying that they saw Nolan with a girl, and they believed that they saw Nolan and this girl struggling in the water. Not necessarily drowning, but struggling. Like it was obvious enough that the person was concerned when they saw Nolan in the water and he was with this girl.
You know, that's from Officer Tatum's show. Cheryl McCollum, it seems to me that that's not true. Because don't you think if a witness saw one or two people, quote, struggling in the water, I would try to help them.
It makes no sense.
And they did nothing?
It doesn't make any sense. That wouldn't be their focal, that they would pay attention to those two people that are struggling to see, is one going under and not resurfacing? What can we do to help? The idea that they would watch that, see a struggle, and then what? Turn back and finish barbecuing? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Not at all. So this is a problem, Greg Morse. You're a veteran trial lawyer. We're getting so much information, and a lot of it is inconsistent. And that is why you have cross-examination. So you can test the evidence. Test whether it's true under the fire of cross-exam. when you have conflicting stories like this, my instinct is to go with the one that makes the most sense. What do you make of these claims that Nolan was struggling in the water? I really believe if he had been, quote, struggling in the water, that either she or her friends would have come forward by now. I mean, what about these guys on the boat that had already left? Don't they want to save them? I mean,
Well,
I'm just trying to find out what happened to Nolan. And if this is true, it may place him on the island after they left.
Well, that's it, and that's what the police are doing. Is they're going to run these leads down, and they're going to try to verify what's credible and what's not before they go to a grand jury. They're going to exclude information that they think is completely uncredible. However, all of this information, if people are arrested at some point in the future and charged with a crime for Nolan Wells' death, then all of these conflicting stories, all of these different timelines, they become a conflict in the evidence. And as you know, Nancy, there's 3 ways a jury can find reasonable doubt if this ever gets there. And one of those ways is in a conflict in the evidence. So these are all favorable things that would benefit a defendant or defendants down the road. However, there's a reason why law enforcement does investigations. Professionals do it, not podcasters talking about it. Verified sources, all of that is nonsense. The police are going to keep information to themselves. They're going to also keep information private so they can test statements that come from people and verify what they're saying based on factors that don't get released in the media. So clearly something happened after 4:30 when the Triton boat apparently left. And all of these things the police will find, they will discover. You know, the police can discover whose phones were active at the time in that whole area if they choose. May not be able to use it in court anymore after the recent Supreme Court decision a few weeks ago on cell site location information. However, it's an investigative tool that they can line up who's there. They can also line these things up by the boats. Right. And they're calling CETO and things like that. So these are all things the police are going to verify and shake out what they believe led to this young man's death.
I can get the GPS, Morse. I can get the GPS. Yep. I can get the cell phone data. I can get the tracking data. I can tell exactly what time the boat left. But I can tell the truth of that. But I can't tell the truth right now about these conflicting reports. Was he on the boat? His phone was on the boat. That's the whole point. He's traveling with his phone, then he's on the boat. They're saying, no, he wasn't on the boat. Now this altercation has arisen, evidence of that emerging after the boat left. Who's telling the truth? The mom, his mom says, no way would he have let the boat leave without his phone. Okay, that said, the mom is getting death threats. Nolan Wells' mother dealing with not only her son is gone, he's dead. The investigation going on. Now she's getting threats. Isn't it true, Susan Hendricks joining us, investigative journalist, author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi, that someone actually called for an investigation into Nolan Wells' mother? Isn't she a home health care nurse?
She is, and it was an anonymous call saying that she needed to be investigated. To me, it was outright backlash connected to what happened to her son. It's despicable considering everything she's already going through. Anonymous calls to say that she's
commissioned by his family, found no fractures, no deep tissue injuries, no documented damage to his hands, no scuffed knuckles. None of the marks a pathologist would expect on someone who had traded blows. On that basis alone, the argument for a physical fight weakens considerably, except the same examination identified an area of red discoloration in the tissue at the back of his head. The pathologist called that finding inconclusive and said it required further investigation. He also wrote that he could not rule out the possibility that non-accidental factors contributed to his death. Cause and manner were both classified as undetermined. 2 findings, one pointing away from violence, one refusing to shut the door on it. Now here is the distinction most commentators skip past, and it matters. When a pathologist examines the hands of someone believed to have been in a struggle, bruising is not the only thing he is looking for. He is looking for abrasion, the outer layer of skin scraped or torn away at points of contact. Bruising is a change beneath the surface. Abrasion is tissue physically removed, and it presents differently. Someone throwing repeated punches, or lifting an arm to block them, would be expected to show marks at those contact points. That is the legitimate version of the argument. It is not nothing, but it is also not certainty, and the report never claimed certainty. The pathologist left the door open. Commentary has been busy slamming it shut from both directions. Okay, now watch why this actually matters beyond the argument. Every contradiction that enters this record gets a second life. If charges are ever brought, conflicting timelines and inconsistent accounts do not simply confuse an audience. They become material for a defense. Conflict in the evidence is one of the recognized paths to reasonable doubt in an American courtroom. Every rumor amplified without sourcing quietly raises a wall a future prosecutor would have to climb. This case has already produced one hard lesson in that. A clip circulated for days as proof that Nolan was heard shouting during a confrontation, until his friend went on camera and said the voice belonged to him, from a completely separate dispute that day. Millions had already accepted the wrong version. Some still carry it. So the standard has to hold. Nobody has been arrested. Nobody has been named as a suspect. Every person mentioned in any account of that day keeps the presumption of innocence, without exception. And while all of this ran, the pressure turned toward his mother. An anonymous professional misconduct complaint was filed against her. She is a nurse. That complaint has since been closed. Her attorney called it frivolous and unfounded, and said it was aimed at frightening a grieving woman into silence. Whoever filed it has never been identified, and never had to be. Then something unexpected happened. The reward in this case now stands at $175,000. Al Sharpton and Tyler Perry each put in $50,000. Terrell Owens added $25,000. And the final $50,000 came from the father of one of the young men who was on Horn Island that day, who said he offered it to get justice for the Wells family while his own household absorbed thousands of death threats. Read that again slowly. Somebody on that island knows something, and the people closest to it are now paying to find out what. Subscribe to Crime Watch Hub and hit like, because when that sealed file finally opens, you will want to already know which claims were real and which were never true at all.